My husband believed he could cheat and walk away unscathed. He never imagined the glue, or the 911 call that would follow. Stay with me to discover what happened next. And please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with those you care about. Your encouragement means everything to us. Now let's return to the story. My name is Lillian Harrison. I'm 38 years old, living in a quiet suburb of Connecticut, surrounded by trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and neighbors who smile kindly while keeping watch on everything. For most of my adult life, I truly thought I had built the perfect marriage. But perfection has a way of slipping through your fingers before you even realize it's gone. It started so softly, like a whisper you almost don't hear. Ethan, my husband of 12 years, began keeping his phone closer than his wallet. He carried it into the bathroom, placed it face down at night, and clutched it with a nervous laugh if I leaned too close. At first, I brushed it off. Life was busy. He had long nights at the office, endless travel, and the stress of climbing the corporate ladder at his firm. I told myself it was just the pressure of being a partner in a demanding law practice. But deep down, unease gnawed at me. The first moment I knew something was wrong came at dinner one evening. He sat across from me, fork in hand, nodding as I spoke, but his eyes were far away, glassy, as though his body was with me but his mind was somewhere else. I remember asking if he had heard anything I'd said. He blinked, as if pulled from a dream. "Sorry, Lil," he murmured with a faint smile. "Just tired." But the smile never touched his eyes. Then came the midnight phone calls. He'd slip downstairs after I had gone to bed, whispering in hushed tones too faint to catch. I would lie awake in the dark, heart pounding, straining to make out even a word. Sometimes, I swore I heard a woman's laughter, soft but sharp enough to cut me. When I confronted him, he brushed it off without effort. "Conference call with Tokyo clients," he'd say. Or, "These Bluetooth headsets pick up everything." And I, desperate to believe, would nod. But the pit in my stomach only grew heavier. It wasn't just the calls. He no longer reached for me at night. The warmth that once radiated from him when he wrapped an arm around me had turned into cold distance. He would roll to the far edge of the bed, body rigid, as if even in sleep he couldn't bear to touch me. The man who used to slip little notes into my purse, "Thinking of you," or "Can't wait for tonight," now barely looked at me when I entered a room. I confided in my best friend, Chloe Daniels, one morning over coffee. She sat across from me in her spotless kitchen, stirring cream into her mug, eyes sharp with concern. "Lillian," she said quietly, "men don't just change overnight. Something's going on. Stop making excuses for him." Her words stung because they echoed the thoughts I had tried to bury. Still, I wasn't ready to accept them. Not yet. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to surprise Ethan at work. I baked his favorite lemon bars, packed them neatly and drove downtown, humming nervously to the radio. But when I arrived, the receptionist looked puzzled. "Ethan? He's not here today. Took the day off." My chest tightened. He had told me he'd be buried in paperwork all weekend. I left the lemon bars on the counter, muttered a thank you and walked back to my car in a haze. That night, when he came home, he smelled faintly of cologne. Not his usual scent, but something sweeter, more exotic. When I asked about his day, he barely blinked. "Just the usual grind," he said, shrugging off his jacket. That was the moment dread hardened into certainty. I knew. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew. One evening, unable to take the tension any longer, I followed him when he said he was going out for drinks with colleagues. I trailed his car through dusky streets, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. He pulled into a small boutique hotel on the far side of town. The kind of discreet place couples choose when they don't want to be seen. I sat frozen in my car, heart hammering, watching as he stepped out, looked around nervously, and disappeared through the glass doors. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my world had split open beneath me. I drove home in silence, tears burning down my cheeks. Every memory of us, the vows, the children we dreamed of but never had, the vacations filled with laughter, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. At home, I poured myself a glass of red wine and sat in the dark, staring at nothing. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the glass. The whispers of suspicion had grown into a deafening roar. And even as the pain wrapped around me like chains, another thought began to take shape. If he was betraying me this way, if he had chosen someone else, then I needed the truth. I had to see it for myself, no matter how much it destroyed me. Because once I knew, once the mask fell, there would be no turning back. And deep down, I already sensed that the Lillian who existed before this betrayal was gone forever. The quiet suspicions had turned into something else. They weren't whispers anymore. They were a promise. A promise that the truth was waiting to be uncovered. The night after I followed Ethan to that hotel, I barely slept. My body ached from holding everything in. And my mind replayed the image of him walking through those glass doors again and again. Still, part of me clung to denial. Maybe it was business. Maybe he was meeting a client. Maybe I was imagining things. But the hollow ache in my chest told me otherwise. I decided I needed proof. Irrefutable proof that would silence every excuse, every lie, every smooth explanation. The chance came on a Wednesday. Ethan had left his phone charging in the kitchen while he showered. Normally, he carried it everywhere, but that day he seemed distracted, humming softly as he headed upstairs. My heart thudded so loudly, I thought it might give me away as I crept toward the counter. I hesitated only a moment before picking it up. Of course it was locked. But I knew his passcode, my birthday. The irony stung as the screen lit up, revealing his hidden world. The first thing I saw were the messages. Thread after thread with a woman named Vanessa Cole. My hands trembled as I scrolled. There were photos. Her in a tight red dress, lips pursed in a kiss toward the camera. Her hair sleek, her smile playful. And then the words, intimate, shameless words. Can't wait for tonight. Same hotel. Bring the lube. You know the one I like. You make me feel alive, Ethan. Alive. That word shattered me. Wasn't I supposed to be the one who made him feel that way? Weren't we the ones who had promised Joy life forever? My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the counter so hard my nails dug into the wood. Upstairs, I could still hear the shower running, his voice humming as though he hadn't just gutted me with betrayal. I dropped the phone back where I found it and stumbled into the living room. For long minutes, I simply stood there, numb, staring at the family photos on the mantel. Our wedding day, our kiss in Paris beneath the Eiffel Tower. Suddenly, it all looked staged. Like props in a play I'd been tricked into performing. When he finally came downstairs, his hair still damp and his shirt pressed neatly, he gave a faint smile. "What's for dinner?" he asked with an easy tone. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone at him, to demand the truth, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I mumbled something about leftovers and slipped away to the bedroom. Inside me, fury, shame, and grief clashed violently for space. I buried my face in the pillow and cried soundlessly until my head throbbed. The next day, I told Chloe. We met at a small cafe near her office. She was already there, her blonde hair tied into a tidy bun, eyes sharp with worry as I slid into the booth. I skipped any small talk. I laid everything out. The hotel, the texts, the photos. Her mouth tightened into a hard line. "I knew it," she whispered, shaking her head. "God, Lillian, I hoped I was wrong, but I felt something wasn't right. He's been acting like a man hiding something." Her words cut deep, because they confirmed the very fear I'd been clinging to. Maybe everyone else had already guessed, and I was the fool who kept believing in him. "Leave him," she said firmly, placing her hand over mine. "You don't need this. You deserve more." But walking away wasn't so simple. Our lives were tangled together. Our finances, our home, our friends. And deep beneath the anger, I still remembered the man I once loved. I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. That night, while Ethan slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The betrayal pressed down like a crushing weight. I thought of Maya Thompson, another close friend who once warned me. Men like Ethan always want more. Don't lose yourself trying to keep him happy. Back then, I laughed off her cynicism. Now it echoed like prophecy. I tried to imagine Vanessa. Did she laugh at his jokes like I once did? Did he touch her with the tenderness he now denied me? Was she the reason his gaze no longer lingered on me like I was his everything? The questions gnawed at me until dawn, and I dragged myself out of bed drained and hollow. In the days that followed, I studied him more closely. His excuses grew thinner. Late nights at the office turned into traffic jams that didn't quite match reality. He came home with faint lipstick stains brushed against his collar, quickly hidden beneath a sweater. I kept my silence. That silence became a weapon, sharp, quiet, and cutting me apart inside. Then came the breaking point. One evening, I opened the trunk of his car to grab our reusable grocery bags. Beneath them, half covered by a jacket, was a boutique shopping bag. Inside lay lingerie, black lace, expensive and far too small for me. It was the final blow to my denial. That night, I confronted him. My voice trembled as I held up the bag. "Who is she, Ethan?" He froze, his jaw tightening. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me." "Vanessa Cole. I saw the messages. I know everything." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then he exhaled, almost in relief, and sank into the couch. "She makes me feel alive, Lil," he admitted quietly. "I didn't mean for it to happen." But that one word cut deeper than any knife. I stared at him, chest heaving, and realized there was no going back. The truth was exposed, ugly and undeniable. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who could betray me so easily, so cruelly. And as I stood trembling with rage and grief, something new began to grow inside me. If he thought he could disgrace me, toss me aside like something worn out, he was about to learn how wrong he was. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a woman ready to plot revenge. When Ethan finally confessed the affair, his words didn't just wound me, they hollowed me out. I sat across from him that night, numb, barely able to process his attempts to explain. And I knew, if I wanted to understand how we ended up here, I'd have to retrace the path back to the fragile beginnings of our love. I met Ethan at 25. I was working at a small publishing house in Boston, fresh out of grad school, brimming with ambition but drowning in student debt. He was a young lawyer then, sharp-suited, magnetic, with a smile that pulled people closer. We met at a charity gala my company sponsored. I remember lingering awkwardly by the wine table, holding a cheap glass of Merlot, when he approached with that confident stride. "You look like you're either planning an escape," he teased, smiling, "or waiting for someone worth your time to show up." I laughed nervously, but his charm disarmed me. We talked for hours about books, travel, all the places we longed to see. I left the gala certain I'd never hear from him again. But the next morning, flowers arrived at my office, a single white lily in a slim vase, with a note, "For Lillian, who made last night unforgettable." That sealed it. What followed was a whirlwind. Dinners, late-night drives, whispered promises. Ethan had a gift for making me feel like I was the only woman in existence. He seemed to hang on my every word. My friends Chloe and Maya were skeptical. "Men like him always carry baggage," Maya warned, sipping her cocktail as she eyed him across a bar. But I ignored her. I was already falling too hard. Within 2 years, we were married. A small but beautiful wedding at a vineyard outside the city. I can still recall the way his hand trembled as he slid the ring onto my finger. I believed every vow, every promise. I thought we were unshakable. Those early years glowed golden. We traveled, Paris, Rome, the Caribbean. We talked about children, though they never came, a quiet ache I pushed aside. Ethan was attentive, generous, always ready with surprises. A necklace, one anniversary. Handwritten notes slipped into my purse. He made me laugh, and I thought that laughter would be enough to endure anything. But the laughter faded, not all at once, but slowly, like water wearing down stone. His hours grew longer. At first, I told myself it was ambition. Then I noticed that even at home, he wasn't really there. He'd sit scrolling through his phone, nodding absently as I spoke. The warmth in his eyes cooled, replaced with distance. I tried to bridge the gap. I suggested date nights, weekend getaways. Sometimes he agreed, but even then, his mind seemed elsewhere. One evening stays sharp in my memory. We went to a little Italian place downtown, one we used to love. I wore the red dress he once said left him speechless. But across the table, sipping my wine, I realized he hadn't truly looked at me all night. His eyes flicked toward the door whenever it opened. His smile felt forced. That night, I cried in the bathroom while he slept. With each passing year, the cracks widened. We argued more, over money, over chores, over everything and nothing. Ethan grew defensive, quick to anger. He stopped holding my hand in public. He stopped pulling me close in the night. Where intimacy once lived, only silence remained. And I kept filling that silence with hope, with excuses, until there was nothing left to give. I brushed it off, telling Chloe it was nothing when she noticed my swollen eyes. Just a rough patch, I said. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Love has a way of blinding you, and now looking back, the signs were all there. Late nights at work, forgotten anniversaries, kisses that felt more like obligations than affection. The distance hadn't happened overnight. It had been building for years. Our marriage had been built on sparks and charm, not on honesty or real communication. The foundation was weak, and eventually it collapsed. The night I stumbled upon Vanessa's messages, every memory we had together came rushing back, suddenly stained with doubt. Was he loyal on our honeymoon in Rome? Did he think of someone else while kissing me under the Eiffel Tower? Had he already been searching for what I could never give him? The questions clawed at me, and no answer could soften the pain. What I did know was this. The man I had fallen in love with no longer existed. Or maybe, he had finally shown me who he truly was. Either way, the Ethan standing before me was a stranger. And that stranger had humiliated me in ways I could never forgive. I thought back to the beginning. Not out of longing, but to remind myself of how fragile it all really was. I once believed what we had was unbreakable, but it was nothing more than glass, beautiful, yet brittle. And he shattered it with his lies. That night I made a vow. If he could betray me so carelessly, if he could trade years of promises for hotel rooms and another woman's touch, then I would not let myself stay his victim. I would take my power back, even if it meant setting fire to everything around us. That vow sparked something inside me, and that spark was ready to become fire. The night I uncovered Ethan's betrayal left me empty. But emptiness doesn't last. It fills, with rage, bitterness, despair. In me it became fire. A fire that burned so hot it dried my tears before they fell. For days I drifted through the house like a ghost, cooking, cleaning, smiling when I had to. But inside I was plotting. Ethan acted as if nothing had happened. As if silence was the same as forgiveness. He thought I was weak. He was wrong. One night, Chloe came by with takeout, her usual way of pulling me out of the fog. She watched me toy with the food, then narrowed her eyes. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking," I replied. "About him?" "No. About me. About what I need to do." Her fork clattered as she set it down. "Lily, don't tell me you're planning something reckless." "Reckless?" I smirked. "No. Just poetic." She studied me inside. "Whatever you do, don't lose yourself in it." But I already had. The idea struck one night when Ethan staggered in late, reeking of expensive perfume, shirt wrinkled, gym bag tossed carelessly on the floor. He collapsed into bed without a word. As I went to move the bag, a small bottle rolled out. Lubricant. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh, carrying his betrayal in plain sight. But as I held it, something clicked. This wasn't just proof. It was opportunity. The next morning, while Ethan showered, I tucked the bottle away in a drawer. I needed time. I needed a plan. And then fate aligned with my fury. 2 days later, I stood in a hardware store aisle, staring at rows of superglue. Thick. Clear. Permanent. The thought hit me so hard I almost laughed aloud. Glue, the perfect symbol. He had ripped apart the vows that once bound us. Now I'd show him what binding really meant. Back home, I emptied the bottle, rinsed it clean, then filled it with glue. Its texture was close enough to pass. I sealed it carefully, wiped it down and slipped it back into his bag. My hands trembled, not with guilt, but with exhilaration. I was no longer just his wife. I was judge, jury, and executioner. That Friday, Ethan claimed he'd be working late. He didn't even look at me as he buttoned his shirt. I kissed his cheek sweetly and whispered, "Don't work too hard." Inside, my heart raced like thunder. That night, Chloe called. "Lil, are you sure about this? You're not the type of woman who what?" I cut in sharply. "Who lets her husband humiliate her? Who sits quietly while he makes me a fool?" "No, Chloe. I'm not that woman anymore." She fell silent, then whispered, "Just be careful." But careful was no longer in my vocabulary. Hours later, the plan came alive. I didn't need to be there. I could picture it perfectly. Ethan and Vanessa, tangled in their affair, reaching for that bottle. The confusion. The panic. The shouting as reality hit. The phone rang not long after, but it wasn't Ethan. It was Daniel Brooks, our neighbor. "Lillian, you should come outside. The police are here." Something about Ethan. I slipped on my coat, calm and steady. Outside, flashing red and blue lights bathed the street. Neighbors whispered in clusters. And there, in the back of an ambulance, was Ethan, red-faced, screaming, paramedics trying desperately to separate him and Vanessa with scissors and acetone. The sight was biblical. Daniel came over, eyes wide. Apparently they got stuck. Like literally stuck. Someone called 911. The whole neighborhood knows. I pressed a hand to my mouth, faking shock. "Oh my God," I whispered, though inside triumph roared. Revenge wasn't just complete. Ethan had been destroyed in the most intimate, unforgettable way. The whispers would haunt him forever. Every stifled laugh, every sideways glance would cut deeper than any tear I ever shed. Chloe's words echoed in my mind. "Don't lose yourself in it." But maybe I already had. Maybe the Lillian who was hopeful and forgiving had died the moment Ethan chose Vanessa. And in her place, someone new had risen. Someone who knew betrayal deserves no mercy. I turned, walked back inside, and closed the door. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. By morning, the neighborhood buzzed like wildfire. By sunrise, Mrs. Carter was already outside in her robe, watering roses that didn't need watering, whispering to Mr. Raymond about what she'd heard. By noon, even the postman lingered, stealing curious glances at our driveway. I sipped my coffee behind the blinds, calm. For once, the chaos wasn't mine, it was his. When Ethan came home from the hospital 2 days later, he was a shadow of himself. His swagger gone, his movements stiff, his face pale. The humiliation of being pried apart under hospital lights had stripped him bare. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Finally, hours later, he spoke, his voice weak. "Lillian, don't." I cut him off. "Not another excuse. Not another lie. You humiliated me for months. Now you know how it feels." He flinched, my words sharper than any blade. "It was a mistake. She meant nothing." "Funny," I said coldly. "How nothing landed you in the ER." That evening, Daniel knocked softly. "Just wanted to check in," he said awkwardly. "Quite a scene. The neighborhood's talking. He'll never live this down." "I know," I replied softly. "That's the point." He gave me a long look, then nodded. Inside, I leaned against the door and exhaled. Not happy but free. The days blurred with gossip and awkward stares. Chloe called often, her tone half disbelief, half admiration. "Lil, I can't believe you actually did it. You've turned his affair into legend." "Good," I said simply. "Let it." Ethan's half-hearted attempts to reconcile, flowers, scribbled notes, only widened the gap. I no longer saw him as a husband, only as a coward. And cowards don't deserve second chances. One night, as he hovered in the doorway, searching for words, I finally ended it. "You broke us, Ethan. And you broke me. But I put myself back together. Without you, there's no undoing this." His eyes brimmed, but I didn't waver. The power was mine now. I was no longer the broken wife. I was the woman who rose from betrayal, unshaken. The whispers around the neighborhood eventually softened, but the memory never did. People avoided him, chuckled behind his back, pitied him openly. Every look reminded him of the night his secret life collapsed in the most humiliating way possible. As for me, I moved forward, stronger, sharper, wiser. I had once loved him with everything I had. But when that love was betrayed, I learned something vital. When trust dies, the only justice left is poetic. So when the neighbors dialed 911 that night, they didn't just summon help. They ended the chapter of me that was naive, forgiving, blind. That Lillian no longer existed. And I wasn't sorry. Hi friends, now tell me, if it were you in my place, what would you do? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. Drop your city in the comments, and share the moment that hit you hardest. See you in the next story.